All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar, Why Buying Groups Break the MQL Model. We've got an hour today. We've got some incredible panelists joining me, as you can see on your screen. In just a second, I'm going to do a short intro to the topic, and then we'll get our wonderful panel to introduce themselves. But while we are waiting for people to join, finish their last Zoom call, perhaps make a cup of coffee, maybe we can do the age-old tradition of sharing where we're joining in the world from with a British twist, what the weather is like outside the window. So I will go first. I'm joining from London, and it is beautiful blue skies, dead grass, 25 degrees, 80 Fahrenheit, which I guess is a cold December day where you are, Kerry.
Yeah, cold December day, yeah. So if I'm next, Kerry Cunningham, I'm in Palm Springs, California, which is about 90 miles east of Los Angeles in the desert. And it is going to be about 111 Fahrenheit today, which is off the scale. It's about 90 degrees right now, and it's 7 a.m.
Wow. Okay. And it's only going to go up from there.
Yeah. No humidity.
Nice.
We're dry.
Nice. Oh, that's okay then. And Dorothea and Christian, correct me if I'm wrong, I think you're both joining from different parts of Germany, if I got that right.
That's correct.
Nice.
Shall I go first? So I'm in a tiny village called Obermettingen in southern Black Forest, just north of the Swiss border. Slightly overcast, 24.5 degrees C. I have no idea what that is in Fahrenheit. I lack the presence of mind of converting that. And we've had a whole night's worth of rain, which is fabulous given the drought we've been experiencing.
Nice.
Almost the same in Munich, in Germany. We have 16 degrees. I just checked it, and a slightly rainy day. But also here, the nature deserves it, and I'm hoping for more.
Yeah.
We can rain the entire 2 weeks because I'm on my way to holiday to Italy, so it can rain and rain and rain.
I checked the Celsius on my temperature, so it'll be about 44 today.
Oh. Brutal.
Yeah.
That's horrible.
Yeah. The pool will be about 30. Yeah.
Man. That's more like a bath, Kerry. That's not a pool. That's
yeah, but when the difference is that big, it's actually really nice. And when the water's that warm, it's soft. So your 16 degrees with a little rain actually sounds really good right now. But
grass is always greener.
In your swimming pool.
Yeah, you probably could. For anyone joining just now, you've joined the meteorological forecast channel. No, you are in the right place. This is why buying groups break the MQL model. I think we've got other people joining from the UK. People have had time to finish their last Zoom call, make a coffee, listen to the weather report. So let's dive in. Before we get going with a bit of an intro, 3 very tiny bits of housekeeping, if I may. First of all, please do ask questions as we go. There should be a Q&A panel over on the right-hand side. I can see that on my side, so that's good. We will be circulating the recording once we've wrapped up. We always get asked, so don't worry about that. That will be heading your way over email, I guess. And the webinar that we're doing today builds on our intent activation blueprint report. And we'll be sharing a link to that too, in case you've not read it and want to explore any of the topics that we cover today further. So I will dive in, do a quick intro. We'll meet our panel properly beyond their current climatic conditions, and then we will dive into the discussion. So to set the scene, everyone and their dog has bought into intent data. In fact, at last count, about 99%, so basically everyone, of large enterprises said that they make use of intent data in one way or another. But in my experience, and we'll see maybe the experience of the panel as well, the overwhelming majority of those businesses have seen intent simply as a way to push more MQLs to sales. Because more signals means more lead scoring points. More lead scoring points means more MQLs. And that means that the single marketing graph that the CEO typically understands, the MQL one, keeps going up and to the right. And yet, despite many months of that effort, best efforts, best peek forward, MQL graphs creeping up all the time, in many cases, qualified pipeline, the stuff that sales actually values and converts into revenue for the business, those metrics simply haven't moved. And so sales writes off the MQLs, writes off the signals, and the CFO starts to hover like a vulture with his or her red pen, asking why we're doing all of this in the first place. And the instinct often is to blame the signals or to blame the underlying data itself, or maybe even the quality of the outreach from sales. It probably varies business by business. But to my mind, something deeper must surely be going Because if the data says that a target account is actively researching a topic or advertising a certain role or investing in a particular piece of tech, this is probably, although not definitely, a useful and meaningful signal, provided that we interpret it and use it correctly as a way of deepening our understanding of the buying group, rather than just as a way of pushing up our MQL numbers. Or maybe not, I don't know. And luckily for me today, I don't need to answer that question because we've assembled an all-star cast for today's webinar. It's the first of a two-part series on intent data, following on, as I mentioned earlier, from our intent activation blueprint report. We're going to be covering a whole range of topics today. In the pre-production call, we went massively off-piste from the discussion, guys, so I'm sure that'll happen again, so it's going to be a lot of fun. And before we get going, let's introduce our all-star cast. So we're lucky to be joined by three absolute marketing legends and experts. And so let's say hello. So first of all, Dorothea Gosling, Executive Consultant at Inflection. Welcome to the webinar. Perhaps you could say a few words to introduce yourself for the listeners.
Cool, will do. Thank you, Nick. That just makes me realize my age, all-star legend, and that kind of adds age to it, but I own my age, so that's good. So as Nick said, I'm Dorothea Gosling. I'm an executive consultant with Inflection Group. There I own anything to do with AI and technology in account-based marketing and marketing. And before I joined Inflection Group, I stood up, I did hands-on work inside the company. I spent 9 years, after having been a marketing generalist, I spent 9 years in a large outsourcing account. On the back of that, was asked to stand up Computer Sciences Corporation, CSC, and later DXC Technologies, global ABM and pursuit marketing practices and centers of excellence. So I come with a bias.
There's nothing wrong with that. Wonderful to have you, Dorothea. Thanks for joining. We also have Christian Weiss, Director of ABM at Autodesk. Christian, massive welcome. Thank you for joining. Perhaps a few words to introduce yourself also.
Yes, thank you very much for having me, Nick. So I'm, as I said, I'm joining from Munich. I'm working for almost 20 years now at Autodesk, and I was part of the first core team thinking and starting about ABM and how we roll it out at Autodesk. Now it's like more or less fully established. Of course, the more you know you don't know what you want to achieve, and the more you see your limits, right? And that's why we are working closely with Inflection, for example, to keep our marketers always up to date and trained. Right now I'm not fully leading ABM at Autodesk. I'm leading a center of excellence for ABM and for field marketing. So I'm always coming with also a bias to these conversations, because now I'm not just intent, I'm also representing the field marketers, and that makes me like even more curious to contribute here. So let's see where we end up.
Awesome. Thank you, Christian. Yes, let's see where we end up. Indeed, it's going to be a fascinating destination, I'm sure. And lastly, but not leastly, joining from the swelteringly hot region of California, we have Kerry Cunningham, who somehow isn't sweating profusely. I don't know how he's managing it. Head of Thought Leadership at 6 Sense and producer of the ever-brilliant and must-read B2B Buyer Experience report. Kerry, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here. And I head up a research and thought leadership practice at 6 Sense for the last 5 years now. And prior to that was at Forrester, and before the acquisition by Forrester, Serious Decisions, and was co-author of the Demand Unit Waterfall, which was our break with the MQL-based world back in 2017. So as Nick kindly pointed out in a LinkedIn post a while back, it's been a while we've been talking about this. This is not a new thing. So I'm super glad to be on the panel today.
Wonderful. Well, look, thank you all for joining us. I suggest we jump straight in, and I guess let's start with a red rag to a bull, which I think is what this is going to be. We were talking about this backstage, but B2B marketing in many organizations, as I see it, is built around the individual, the lead, the MQL, in many cases, the poor soul who has the misfortune to fill in a form on a website and gets hounded to the ends of the earth.
Yeah.
But buyers aren't individuals, right? And so if the real unit that we need to worry about is the buying group, what has to change in marketing? What does that mean for the job of a marketer? And what does that mean about the way we think about and use intent data? And perhaps, Kerry, I can ask you to contribute first there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one thing that is helpful is just to understand a little bit about how we got where we are. Because it isn't the case that everybody's dumb and been doing the wrong thing for years and whatever. But, we got where we are for a reason. And the reason is pretty simple. So put it this way. virtually all of the systems and processes and like the mental models we have of how B2B revenue is produced grew out of what was happening back about 20 years ago in B2B. And that's when, if you work in a software company, chances are it's not much older than that. Some are, but most aren't. If you work in a SaaS company, it for sure was not older than that. And during that period of time, you had this tremendous growth, lots of new companies, lots of hyper growth, and then systems and processes that were built with the technology available at the time. And one of the companies that was hyper scaling and all of that was Marketo. And these systems that were built back then were built around the idea that if we can get somebody to come to our website and get them to fill in a form, we can chase them down with a BDR and introduce them to our company and get them to go into a buying process. And at the time, that was actually kind of how it worked, because we didn't have much on our websites. People weren't used to going to them. If they wanted to find out about our solutions, then they had to talk to a sales rep still. That there just wasn't enough history of our companies. They didn't know us well enough. They didn't know our solutions well enough. And there wasn't enough information out available in the world. They had to talk to somebody. And so the buying process and the selling process, just within the lifetimes of everybody on this call, really started with a conversation between a buyer and a seller. So that's our model. That's the model that everything we have today is built on, is buying and selling start together at a point where those two people have a conversation and then things move forward. But that model hasn't been a fit for what actually goes on for 12 years, 10 years, 12 years, 15 years, somewhere in there, depending upon where you are. Because today, buyers don't want to talk to anybody until they're 60% through their journey. And then I'll share one piece of data from our new study that we haven't published yet. We asked buyers, did you do anything to disguise your identity while you were researching this, while you were in market for the solutions? And I'll put it in the negative. Just 35% of people said that they did not disguise themselves. 65% of people said they did something to avoid the form altogether or to put information in it that's wrong. So if you want to know why your MQL suck, that'll do it right there, right? That's it. We caused that, but that's where we are today. That, you know, our systems and our models, processes are built around the idea of one person coming to a form, filling it out, and then having to talk to you to start their buying journey. They don't have to do that anymore. And they know us very well. Our companies have been around for a long time now. They have been around for a long time now. And when you put those things together, what you have is very experienced people who are part of a buying group who enter the process with ideas on day one about what they want to do. And it's really about litigating within the buying group what they're going to do, not discovering new things.
Awesome. Great introduction to the concept, Kerry. Thank you. And Dorothea and Christian, I can see you both nodding vigorously and probably dying to jump in. So please, what's your perspective?
Dorothea, do you want? I have something to say, of course.
You go for it. I'll gather my thoughts.
First of all, Kerry, I completely agree. I listened to some of your presentations already, so I know your opinion, but this is exactly where I started at Autodesk. We marketers, we had a massive budget of telemarketers, right? We had people who filled forms, happy to fill forms, because there's a form, I have to fill it, so we all follow the path. And that was our entire workflow and engine. It was fully automatized. I could calculate where the funnel ends up at the end and how much revenue we will make by investing what. And that model worked 100%, because that was the tool we had. So when you have a hammer, you're looking for nails, right? Right now we have a massive toolbox, and a hammer is just also part of the entire toolbox. And if I would use the hammer to beat everything I see, then I will on one side destroy relationships, because I will call people who don't want to be called, and I'm massaging them through a funnel they don't want to be in, because they inform themselves differently now. And on the other side, I think the hammer is not fitting anymore that well, right? I was talking to an executive, one of our customers, and I said, "How do you perceive our marketing? What is your recommendation to me as a marketer to reach out to people like you?" And he said, "I would never ever fill a form." That was the first reply, right? And I think this triggered my thinking, right? So I have to build relationships. I have to understand them differently. I have to know to whom is he also talking to in the company. So the buyers committee is exactly what we should look at when the company is built out of more than one person, right?
Yeah,
So
I agree.
times have changed.
Yeah, and I think I agree with both of you. The bit that struck me, I always have an aversion to forms, because you end up in somebody else's process, and that process is invariably, unless you have a very sophisticated canvas, it's linear, and it assumes that once you've downloaded something and we're silly enough to give your real name and your real identity, that you're ready to talk to someone and actually want to buy that. I might just be informing myself. I might be curious. I might be pals with one of their competitors and getting some data for them in the guise of someone else. And I think it's this total disregard of the actual buyer's needs, the human being at the other end of this, that marketers and sellers, to some extent, fail to take into account. I always say, put yourself into the shoes of the person that is visiting your website. And would you want to be treated like that? And most people, I bet you most people who create those forms and processes would, oh my God, no. So why should anybody else, right?
I think that's such an important point. One of the things I keep pointing out to people is, if you're a B2B marketer today, it's very likely that your goals, your success for this next quarter, next year, is predicated on there being people in the world who behave in a way that is absolutely foreign to you, that fill in forms, that talk to BDRs when they're starting their buying, all of these things that you would never do. And yet everything that you have on your plate, your job, depends on there being people like that. And there aren't, it's not always the right thing to compare yourself to who your buyers are. If you're selling to engineers and you're a marketer, that's not exactly the same thing. But, they are human beings. And I think, if you met them at a cocktail party, they would tell you, hell no, I'm not going to fill in a form. And you would say, yeah, me either.
Or if they are, they're going to fill it in as Mickey Mouse, right? By the sounds
Mickey
of it.
Mouse, right? Yeah.
Very much.
Yeah.
I had a team member once. She told me I had 20 odd fake, accounts that she just used for form fills.
Yeah.
Good luck there.
Yeah, that sounds about right. So if we've sort of, as suspected, that was going to be a bit of a red rag to a bull. If we've trampled the idea of MQLs and form fills into the ground, right, and that's something that marketers have relied on as sort of like a source of, I don't know, data, insight, something to follow up on. Like, what replaces it? Is this where intent data and sort of the other signals that we've got available starts to fill that void? How do people navigate if we're gonna move form fills to one side?
So I'd say the intent data is one important piece, and it depends on how that is actually composed and what the quality of the underlying data is. I think the MQL, if you do it right, if you have actually really defined a good process and understand what value whichever step really has to that individual, it's probably still there as something to validate against. But I think the key is to look at being able to unify data across an account, not just, and that's really one of the first kind of conversation I had when I joined that global team at then CSC. We went through this massive web review, and everything was linear and page-based and journey-based, but very generic. And I said, turn this round for me into something that aggregates this at a company level. And that told a completely different story. So you have the company data, and then, of course, in those days, you couldn't individualize. But now that you have the ability to actually track, so either as known or as unknown repeat visitors, individuals, and if you then understand how business works, you can actually, and an AI can help you here, and Kerry probably knows far more than I do about that, then you can create clusters of people who are probably swimming in the same direction, and they should be treated as such, rather than lots of individuals. It makes far more sense to look at it that way, and then try and understand, well, what are their roles? So what is the makeup of this buying center? And why are they here? What are they potentially solving for? And use that as your starting point to converse with them. That would be my thinking on that.
Yeah, I think collecting behavior information brings us to a totally different level, right? The challenge I see is, how do we bring the behavior I can see and measure into action? And this has a level, so without AI and without like solutions who can help me with that, it's just data, right? And not every marketer is, let's say, a nuclear physics or whatever. So someone who can really like interpret complex data in real time and translate this into an email or into an ad or a message. And therefore, so there is a decent complexity which forces me to, let's say, handle this, right? And therefore, there's always, let's say, one eye which looks at the MQLs, right, as a safe harbor, right? At the end, someone will fill my form as well, right? On the other side, I have to, let's say, make a stake, so put a stake in the ground for MQLs. I think if someone wants to talk to sales, they have to find an easy channel to raise their hand, right, and say, okay, now it's time. I need to talk to someone human, right? And then ideally they don't have like the answering machine or the fax number in front of them, but someone who really like is interested in their like real intent and interests. This has to happen, right? So we are right now building like a coexistence of MQAs and intent data and MQLs, because MQL has to, let's say, the open channel. So if someone wants, they should. But to build my business model on MQLs, I would, let's say, be worried.
I would just maybe it's useful to back up a step also and just think about what we're trying to do here, which is, if you've got an MQL, what we know is that the typical buying group in B2B is about 10 people. And by the way, it doesn't grow every year. I mean, there's actually a kind of a logical limit to the number of people who are going to be involved in a buying process. It can get a little bit bigger, but it doesn't just keep growing infinitely. But anyway, there's like 10 to 12 people in a buying group, wherever you are. If one person from a company that you would like to sell to comes to your website and consumes a bunch of content, but there's no evidence that anybody else from that company is on your website or has looked at you, it's almost certain that that company is not in market, right? That's kind of obvious when you think about it.
Yeah.
But if that one person is a company, one person who fills in a form, and they're accompanied by 3 or 4 people who are on your website anonymously from the same account, as Dorothea said, looking at the same kinds of content, that suggests there's something happening here. And if you see 6 or 8 of those people, there's definitely something happening here, and you should pay attention to that. Now, it doesn't mean that they're ready to talk to you, but it does mean that there's probably something there, and you should be paying attention to that and trying to understand what's going on in that organization. And then if you take third-party intent, you layer that on top and say, okay, this company is out looking for information on this topic. There's a bunch of people on my website. Somebody was silly enough to fill out a form, probably a fake name. But now we know that there's something happening in this account. And if I've got 100 accounts and I've got 3 or 4 where there's multiple lines of evidence that suggest they're in market, I should probably point my resources toward the ones that are in market, that are showing all these signals. It's that simple. So it's not a matter of, is the intent signal better than this signal or whatever. It's not that. It's layers of evidence about who's in market and what you should do about it, right? And that's what we have to be thinking, and stop, all of this. Well, intent data didn't work. Okay. In the same way that my exercise regimen from last year didn't work because I stopped doing it on January 7th or whatever. So
yeah, 100%. I'm always, for a long time now, explaining intent data like a Where's Waldo picture, right? You have one person, and this is a picture with maybe 300 people, not with like 50,000 employees or 100,000. You have maybe 200 people on this picture, and one is filling a form, right? And you think the entire company is just adoring you and loves you and want to buy. Yeah. So it's just a misunderstanding, right? So without intent data, you are always following the wrong direction at the end, right? And
I think you can also add to that. So one thing I used to talk about, because I spend so much time in a large account, and these big tenders or RFPs, they have a rhythm and they have a cadence. So imagine you're a marketer and you have all of a sudden all these people from that company on your website, and they're looking at your investor relation page, they're looking at other things. If you're an established account, don't get too happy. Don't start marketing at them, because they might just be looking for who to talk to, because they might not like the way you're handling their service level agreements. They're looking at your investor relations page to use the word of the CIO of that client at the time I was working on. It's like he wanted a chain to yank that could actually make a difference. So sending them random marketing information because you think they're really onto something and want more might be the wrong thing. And that's why I think you need to have the data, what are they doing where, but it's the why, and it's for the marketer to have enough business acumen to, at the basic level, check in with the account if it's an established account. What's our relationship with them like? Are you aware? Is there a deal coming, or have you broken something and they're a bit upset? To make that connection between your business and their business before you go into marketing overdrive. And with the way marketing is structured at the moment, that is hard for the marketers.
And I guess one of the things, Dorothee, you mentioned there, we've covered, I think it was layers of evidence, which is a great way to put it, and the flipping and the looking at all of the data. But we're in a position where today we've got more signals from more systems, arguably, than we've ever had before. And I wonder whether you think that's made us better at understanding accounts, or it's just added to the noise. Like, what do we think?
Well, I think it could make us better. It's the inability of businesses. They often don't have clean data, so the data is already a red herring, and B, they don't necessarily put it together in a meaningful way for people to access. And because we're not all data scientists, so somehow you need to be able to visualize that data in a way that it tells a story that's meaningful, i.e. does those checks and balances. Pretty agentic AI can help us solve that. But it's not just about the data, it's about our ability to visualize it and interpret it in a meaningful manner for the various functions that would all benefit from looking at it.
Makes sense. And I guess, Kerry, that must be a subject Sixth Sense, right? Because I know you have the concept of the signal verse, which processes billions of signals. Is it a day? Like, what's your perspective on that? Is more better?
Yeah. Right now, it's not. I think we're in a period of time where there's a lot of signal and a lot of idea, but not a lot of effective action. The reason, so even back at Forrester, and I was there, we made this thing called the buyer signal framework. And we tried to say, let's not use the word intent, because we don't know that. We don't know what their intent is. We can infer what we think it is. But what we know is if somebody's on a website somewhere looking at content related to a subject, there's some interest, right? These are signals of interest. And there are going to be a lot of signals of interest before there's actually any real intent. Now, what's great today is that virtually everybody has access to very powerful AI. And what AI is really, really good at is finding patterns in data. And so the patterns in data that we care about are the ones that say, if there's activity coming from an account that is this size and the activity in January looks like this, what does that mean about what that organization is going to be doing in February, March, April, May, June, July? Are they likely to be in market? Are they early in a process, later in a process? Everybody should be thinking about, how do I see that entire buying journey so that I can engage and influence that buying group? One of the things I hear in what virtually everybody talks about with respect to intent data today and leads is just enabling a sales rep to make a call. But what it shows is by the time that sales rep gets the chance to talk to a buyer, they will have already made most of the decisions they need to make. And the sales rep's not going to change those very much. Marketing's job has to start and be effective a long time before that. And so, yeah, it's important at the right time to have the right names for a sales rep to follow up with, but it doesn't matter if you haven't done the job earlier in the buying process. And I'll say this, if you have done the job well early in the buying process, it also does not matter if you have the right name. So think of this. You're the head of accounting. You know you need a new accounting platform. All of the accounting platforms that you've known for the last 20 years now have AI inside them, and they're doing new interesting things, and you can't wait to do it, and you're getting pressure to cut costs and be more effective and all of that. So you go out and market and you start evaluating accounting platforms that you're already very familiar with, but now you're trying to figure out what they're doing with AI. You and your buying group of 10 people do that for like 6 months. You take your short list, again, of companies that you know really well, and you decide, this is the one we think we like. Now it's time to go out and press the flesh. Let's push the buttons. Let's get some demos, make sure it's doing exactly what we think it's doing. So that's the point at which your sales rep needs a name. But you have to ask, is there any possibility that buying group at that point is going to say, now let's just sit back and see if any of the accounting vendors call us, and then we can decide if we're going to buy one. No, I mean, companies go into market to buy things because they need them. And whether you call them or not, the only way it makes a difference is that call helps develop preference among the members of that buying group. And if it doesn't do that, it doesn't matter if you have their name. If it does that, also doesn't matter if you have their name.
Yeah, agreed. And how does this show up for you, Christian? Sorry.
Yeah, I wanted to make a quick point because we are also talking to marketers here, right? So we have to think about the marketing process also before sales touches the phone. And my impression is, so we know a lot now. We have the intent data available and so on, but many marketers build their marketing plans for like several months, right? And then it's implemented and in concrete, it's done. And how do I react when I see now a change in behavior? I see various patterns in these accounts and in their like subsidiaries in these accounts. We have accounts with like 100, 200 subsidiaries. How do I react on the change in intent and behavior? And for me, this is exactly the gap we have right now between I have AI to ask if my cactus is sick at home, right? Or my cat eats the wrong food or whatever. Or we are in agentic environments, right? And find something special out. But is it already leading to real transformation? And I think this is the next step where we can build workflows to help me reacting on a change in engagement, in a change in behavior, and showing different interest, especially for companies with more than one product. They might show a different intent, right? How do I react on that? Do I wait another quarter until my campaign runs over, and then I can kick off the next campaign? Or am I as flexible as I can be and react quickly without calling even them, right? But build a different story, change the content and so on, but not in the way we have it done, like fully mechanical, when we started with nurturing and these things like and marketing automation and stuff, right? This is not AI and this is not intent-based marketing, right? So I think the next level could be really transformation of workflows. Mm-hmm. Can I react so quick that I can interpret the data and respond to that with fitting content?
That's cool. That's interesting. Can I come back to something Kerry said about marketing having that it plays partly into what you just said, Christian, but I think marketing having done the job that it needs to do to be on the radar and have those clients or prospects informed. And I think this comes back also to your question, Nick, about is there enough data, too much data? I think the question also has to be, is there enough of the right data? And I think particularly when you get to buying group buying, we're talking about B2B buying here. A lot of companies and marketing teams, they're so specialized now. We've seen the marketing tech landscape explode over the last 10, 15 years. It's insane. So we have lots and lots of specialists who don't have a business to end-to-end business overview of their own business, of their client's business. But I think what we need is not just to focus on the customers, but on who influences these customers. Who do they listen to? And that is very often not represented in a marketing or a sales data stack. Who are their auditors? I mean, don't talk to them because while they're the auditors, they are not allowed to influence them. They're just auditing. Which organizations are they part of? So I think we need to look at a wider lens with better data to use, and we have the technology to use all the channels to influence at different levels, not just the customers and prospects, but the people they trust.
That's a really interesting point. So it's about taking that broader holistic view of how people build preference, how we end up at the top of that short list of 5 at the point where we go into the validation phase. That's what we've got to be using the data for, rather than this sort of linear MQL driven process. But to come back to the point that you made, Christian, I thought was super interesting around how, and tell me if I have this right, where the MQL world has sort of baked us into this sort of linear and quarterly planning process where it's like, we're going to do this, we've decided it, so we're going to and do it. And we have to be careful, even when we are operating in a world where we're using signals a bit more intelligently and thinking about buying groups, that we don't constrain ourselves in the same way. And we remain agile, and we don't try and mechanize and industrialize things too much, because that's going to squeeze out the ability to be responsive and actually to give buying groups and people on that journey what they need. I thought that was a really interesting point that I've not quite heard made that way before.
And also, I mean, the question is also, how do I respond as a marketer to what I see now, right? Can I now, as many do, right, press a button and say, okay, now I have another white paper, right? I send it to them and send a LinkedIn message. Now I see these many LinkedIn messages, as you are in ABM, and I've seen your article. And then when you're like, yeah, this is really funny, because this is not personalization, right? This is just pretending that you understand me by using technology. And so we marketers should invest our time now in, how do I talk to these people who change their behavior, who show intent and whatever, and maybe ask ChatGPT, what are their top 5 vendors? So how can we respond to that without looking stupid?
Yeah. And I guess it's sort of, we're starting to pick here, without looking stupid. That's always a good move, eh?
That was a hard one, right?
That was hard.
I always struggle with that. No, it's still work in progress. But I think what you're starting to scratch at there, Christian, is something that we've seen real interest in, and what we're thinking about a lot, which is the difference between personalization and relevance, right? Where I think that personalization has been sort of the technical barrier to reaching people with a more individualized message, but it was never the goal. And I think that now that AI is making the personalization barrier vanish, the relevance challenge still sits there. It's a little bit like with coding, where Claude Code can write whatever you want, but you need to have the right idea, and you need to have, otherwise it's just going to write something that's irrelevant. And do we think that we're going to see a greater focus, now that we're seeing all of this personalization being done at scale, on actually, what is relevant, and personalization becomes the means rather than the end?
Can I jump in? I love that word, relevance. One of my colleagues back at Serious Decisions, even before the acquisition, did a main stage presentation at Summit, respect and relevance as the two things that we really needed to have in mind. And I think that that's so right and so important. And then when we think about a buying group, today we only really think about what's relevant to somebody who is our ideal customer, our persona, the person, the buyer, the ultimate decision maker who owns that. But I'll share a little bit more from our current research. So we asked people who, so we get respondents from all the different roles in the buying process. One is the financial ratifier, so somebody from the CFO's office. And we asked everybody a question: what was more difficult for you in the buying process, justifying the category of solution or choosing the vendor? And you get about a 50-50 split across the board. But when you ask the CFO or somebody from the CFO's office, 78% of the time, they say the category, not the vendor. So I think that one of the things we all have to remember, we're so focused on beating our competitor, what are our differentiators and all of that stuff. Well, the people back, unless you're marketing automation or CRM or something like that, and your buyers have to buy you. Otherwise, the rest of the buying group, beside the person who's running the show there, isn't necessarily bought in on the value prop for the category. Right? They don't understand why your thing is necessary, right? Much less which of you. And so buying processes are probably more often being killed, or certainly more often being killed, by a failure to justify the category than they are by losing because you lose to your competitor. And if you go look at any of the content on your website or in your programs, none of it is relevant to those other people and to that question, virtually none of it. End of sermon.
That is a fascinating point. Dorothea, go on.
Yeah, no, it's a really strong point. I've just come off a program where I helped a client develop a segment marketing campaign in banking, And the great thing was their banking sales teams, they were all real strong industry experts. And between them and me, we wrestled the corporate language into, and we went through a very structured exercise. Now, what does a CEO call the problem? How do they frame the problem they have? And we started with the client. What problems are they solving, and which are the problems they have to solve actually relevant for you that you can address meaningfully for them and for you, because you don't want to lose money on this. And then we went through this, and how did people talk about it? And then we translated their value props into the language of the clients. And that was a really useful exercise, because it also helped others in marketing understand why this change in language will be important. Because to your point, Kerry, they're not looking for our SEO when in the days of SEO, for our SEO keywords. They're looking for something to solve their problem in their language. And every company has its own taxonomy. Layer on top of that, an internet that's largely English language, and an audience that is trying to struggle articulating their real problem in a language that isn't their first language. And that so if you start with that in mind, and then bring it down to their real problem and how they talk about it, that's already a big step done in solving a whole lot of other problems, including relevance and respect along the way.
Yeah, that's true.
How do you see this, Christian? Like, does this show up in your world? Do you sort of focus on justifying the category, or how does it look at Autodesk?
We are building our own category. That's the easiest way. No, we are in a category which is relatively complicated, because there are the B2B marketers who offer IT services and stuff, and we are in the category of design and make. So we have customers who design special effects in cinema movies, or they create computer games, or are architects or engineers. So it's relatively difficult. So we are trying to build this category of design and make. So that was the easiest way. And then we put ourselves in the Gartner quadrant on the top, of course.
As you do.
You just have to keep in mind that the people who aren't your target buyer persona don't understand that, and they're going to have to be sold on the category.
I completely agree, and they don't search for this category, because it's just something we defined, right? And therefore, it's a complicated thing. Yep, I agree.
If you're the size of Autodesk, you can probably do that. And that's one thing. If you're not, then it gets a lot harder.
Yep.
Most potential customers will be asking, well, so what? Who cares? Who told you? What makes you the arbiter of that? Yeah.
I think the point around enabling champions, let's say, or sort of individuals who understand the category within the target account to go and sell and influence the buying group on our behalf is something that would be good to pick up on. We've seen real success in our business where we've got a champion in marketing, let's say a CMO, who really wants to go ahead and convince the CFO and the CEO, working with them to understand like what's going on in the business and how does this work and what kind of justification do you think they're going to need. And we've had some cases where we've helped to build particular documents or arguments or business cases, and they've gone and discussed it with, say, the CFO, and they've come back and they haven't been able to believe how effective it's been, because by taking that time, I wonder whether perhaps, Christian, whether you follow a similar process where you get really deep and you understand, who are the real key players and how do we influence them, what's big in their world, and have you seen success through that kind of a program that you could talk about?
Yeah, I think this is the difference between a random marketer and someone who really invests time in like understanding the customers. And especially in ABM, I think you have to have a real passion for your clients. And I have to admit, sometimes I'm talking to customers also in person, and I've asked so several of them, so how do you want us to do marketing, right? So that I understand how do they perceive what we are bombarding them with constantly, right? And some of them have no idea what we do, right? Some have never seen anything. and others have. So another one said he was leading the innovation of a large company, and he said, yeah. So among us nerds in the company, we have one folder where we put all the content in you guys sending us, and when we have time, then we look at it. We don't have that much time, he said, right? So that's also like it's like a content graveyard, yeah. So what I'm thinking about right now, and that's why I was a bit distracted. If we have all the information now, right, and all marketers in B2B have the same information now about like content and about intent and behavior and so on, does that make me a better marketer? I think here we have to really understand what they are doing and what they care about, and this is more than just data. And on the other side, if we have all data, how much of my time do I invest in interpreting it right and then building like the latest, hottest stuff of marketing I've ever seen, right? Because everyone else can do now what I do. They can all do like emails with AI content. They can all do hyper targeting and whatever. Do I really invest my time now in like the hottest shit? How do I cut through the noise? Because everyone has now the tools to create noise, right? And the fancy noise and the nice one and the AI created images and whatever. So that's now the new standard, right? But how do I build something which is really out of interest in my audience? And I think you're asking exactly the right question, Nick. So we have to like have a passion for the customers, right? And really dig deep and interpret it. And I think there are marketers who, when you ask them, how are your numbers, right? And how are you performing? And they download the report and send it over, right? Make a screenshot maybe from your weekly like update. And there are others who have this analytical mindset and they start playing around and like discovering and understanding in depth and so on and finding these dynamics in between. And I think this is the marketer of the future, right? Those who can like invest more than just downloading 5 numbers, because then intent data will not help, right? So I think we need these people who can like start playing with it.
People who can operate at a different level. So I love the thing that you said there around like passion for the customer, right? Because that speaks to like really deeply understanding and getting under the skin of like what makes them tick, you know, what's big in their world, what are they wrestling with, and you know, that's a really exciting idea, and it doesn't show up, as you say, in MQLs and in other sort of graphs that we might have. And Dorothea, I'm guessing that's something that you'd vehemently agree with, right? The passion for the customer and the need to really get on the inside.
Oh, totally, because it's like I said earlier, they all act as, of course, as their business function, but they're also all individuals. And I think and I don't mean that in a creepy way, but if you understand who the actual people are in that buying center and what makes them tick, it is much easier to not just be relevant, but to establish rapport. And that rapport, if you don't disappoint them, establishes trust, and the trust creates preference. So that is the right route. And what, in my view, you need for that are marketers. And I know I keep going on about this, but a marketer who is, yes, they can have a deep specialization in something, like Christian just said, they get really deep into something, but always with the goal to then get out of there, better understand it, and have a broader vision of that end-to-end. And not just the marketing, the business journey that client is on, and where your business can best support it, and then play their part back to specialists and play their part to help create that. But make sure, because I think another key skill will be to be a team player. You know, buyers buy in groups, and I think companies should sell in marketing groups, not as individuals who own the email, who own the personalization, who own retargeting, who own, I don't know, customer success, but act as a cohesive team that collaborates. And AI can help that, because as I said earlier, if the data platform is created that visualize it, you can actually get the scale. You can focus on the relevant and on delivering, versus in the past you were chasing the data points and trying to make them make sense.
Yeah, I'm smiling as you're talking about that, Dorothea, because I'm working through. I'm nearly done with this book here, which is called Industrial Buying and Creative Marketing, which is from 1967, and it talks about all of these things that you've just run through, and it talks about the end-to-end need for the focus, the understanding of the business, and the thing that really strikes me as I read it is how narrow marketing has become, because back then when this was published, you have the same.
No, this is Investitionsgütermarketing.
Marketing,
It's the German version from the late 80s.
Nice. So you know what I'm talking about, right? It's amazing to me how all of the concepts that we're talking about here are about the broadening of the discipline of marketing. And the thing that I've really taken from it is marketing should be about everything that we do in the market. Like how we show up, what we sell, what the price is, how we distribute, who influences, all of those things. And I think what we're saying in the round is that marketing has become sort of so narrow in many businesses. And Kerry, you talk about SaaS businesses. I mean, we're a SaaS business, and the MQL model really is the only thing that we've ever known up until the last sort of 18 months. And so for me, it's been a really interesting journey. But I think there's a huge opportunity for marketers who can really grasp the nettle here to reclaim that broader landscape, and to start working in the way that, you know, Kerry, Christian, and Dorothea that you're talking about, with that slightly broader purview, and really I think that's potentially the next competitive advantage.
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, we've started talking about the jobs that marketing has to accomplish at a high level. And I think we're way over rotated on one, which is competing against our competitors to get our slice of the existing pie of spend in our category. That's where almost all the money and attention is spent. And that's where all of the MQL stuff, there's nothing else to that. That's entirely what it is. But when you look at how many buyers are in market at any given point in time, but how many are actually buying, there is massive attrition across the buying journey. Most buyers who go out into market and seriously intend to evaluate vendors and make a purchase don't. And they don't because of a number of reasons. But as it turns out, not even being able to justify the category spend to the CFO is the top one, right? And if you go look on B2B websites, you will find virtually nothing that addresses that, right? So, you know, there's work to be done there, and that's not competing. And that, by the way, that may help your competitor too. If you go out and do some great content on justifying the category, you know, you're probably going to lift your competitors too. But it's going to be the tide that lifts all of the boats, and better to have all of the boats lifted than to have them all dry docked and not moving forward. I can't take that any further because I don't know anything about maritime. As far as I can take that, but
I like it. Where I thought you were going to go there, Kerry, is better to have the rising tide raid ships than to have the ships shooting at each other and both sinking, right? That's
fair enough. That's it. That's better. Yeah, that's much better. Thank you.
We'll clip that out. Well, look, time has flown, right? I can't believe we've been going for nearly an hour, but we have. What's the saying? Time flies when you're having fun. One thing that we did ask is for everyone to prepare a bit of a hot take on the future of marketing, and I think we've been through a couple of those as we've gone through. But Dorothea, perhaps I can start with you. What's your hot take on the future of marketing?
I wrote that down because I have a habit of being a bit random. So if you're a specialist who understands one channel, one metric, one slice of the funnel, AI can now do a version of your job. That's uncomfortable, but not new, just faster. What AI exposes rather than causes is that most modern marketing teams weren't really built to understand business. Back to when we started out, we were generalists, so we had to have that understanding, and not just the business, their own business, but their client's business. But that used to be. That's just not happening at the moment. And somehow in the last 20 years of fragmentation, that's got lost. This big picture view across everything, and that seat at the table of marketing, of strategy, got lost as well. And AI made that gap more visible because it removes the busy work that used to disguise it. So the opportunity isn't to use AI to survive, but to use it to buy back the time that you never had to understand the clients, understand your accounts, and put that understanding back at the center of what marketing does. That was my hot take.
Wonderful. Hot and very, very much accurate from my perspective. Christian, how about you? What was your hot take?
Well, this makes it now difficult. Thank you, Dorothea.
Sorry.
So my hot take is on the future of marketing. I think AI, intent data, and the interpretation of this is the new normal, right? So in some months and quarters, we all will handle this. We all have the data available. We all have invested in the solutions to help us doing this. So I think this doesn't make us unique and special in how we do marketing. On the other side, when I look into like statistics who say buyers need more time now to make decisions, and there's a new generation of buyers who have let's say, an extended decision cycle, and this leads to one insight for me. So there is one thing which the last generation before the new generation came in has had to make better decisions is, from my point of view, relationships. So how can we make use of all the information we have now, of all the intent data, to build long-lasting, trustful relationships with customers who are most relevant for us? And I think this is bringing the humans back. Yeah, when we are all sending AI-created messages and all fancy AI-created images and the 120,000 white paper, at the end, it's the relationship and the trust I have into the vendor who's me deciding quicker than in another way. Yeah. And therefore, I think make use of this, make use of the data, make use of the tools you have available to make this. Build strong relationships, send messages who cut through the noise and who are not just random, because the success stories you are creating are exactly the same as your competitors do. It's just a different logo. So this is not counting anymore. Yeah. So really make sure that you invest your time in cutting through the noise and make something creative and build human relationships. I think that's building on the new standards of AI.
Yeah, wonderful. And I think the point about relationships definitely resonates, because we've seen a real resurgence of interest in face-to-face events and communities and all of these sorts of things. That's definitely a timely point. And Kerry, how about you? What was your hot take on the future of marketing?
I love
one
love
for today.
what Dorothea and Christian already said, so that was great. My hot take is that our initial use of AI in B2B marketing is going to backfire dramatically as we spam buyers and personalize our way into the creepiest possible marketing, and that ultimately it will come down to doing exactly what Christian and Dorothea just talked about. The marketers who will win are the ones who will develop relationships, build, participate in the working lives of the audiences, the people that they want to market and sell to, not the ones who just find a clever way to get their attention for 30 seconds.
I love that.
I think there's something brilliant about that, because it's about sort of going back to fundamentals and actual meaning, rather than just like stuff that's noisy and grabs attention for 2 seconds. So there's a lovely, I see people writing in this, like, people buy from people, like absolutely. Until the buyers are AI, but that's a couple of years away.
We're ways off there,
yeah. Give it time. Anthropic haven't quite got there yet. So look, I think we're nearly up on time, but I think we have time for one question. So one that's come up in the chat is that we've seen that gated material isn't working like it used to. Curious of attitudes of exit engagement forms when we ask for information at the end of the engagement as they navigate away from the site. So I think the question there are those forms that pop up when you start to leave the site. Is that a valid way? Is that something that people have seen work?
That's a nice idea, I would say. So when you're really interested and you read through the end, most of the time I see the feedback forms coming like even before I've started reading. So thanks for registering for our newsletter, whatever, right? So when the mechanics work, then why not? Yeah. I'm not a fan of hiding the content behind lots of firewalls, because that doesn't show engagement at the end. And then if you keep the information you want to share from your clients, then your own mistake.
Absolutely. particularly in a world where we need to justify the category, right, and get people comfortable with the idea of making a purchase. So look, I think we're pretty much up on time. We've covered a huge amount of ground, right? We've gone all the way through the early 21st century sort of MQL process, all the way through to AI and ABM and signals and everything in between. So thank you so much, Kerry, Dorothea, and Christian, for joining me. Wonderful to speak as always. And for those of you listening, I hope this was useful, entertaining. We went massively off script and into the weeds, so thank you everyone for rolling with the punches. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did.
My part in that, yeah.
We're all guilty, Kerry. So look, thank you so much, everyone. Dorothea, Christian, Kerry, I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. Thank you for joining.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for bringing us together. Thank you all.
Yeah. Thank
Wonderful.
you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.